On this episode of China Uncensored, no dogs or Chinese allowed. Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Over the weekend, top party leaders met for the third plenum to hash out Chinese leader Xi Jinping's economic blueprint for the coming years. I bet, finally, the Communist Party is really going to make some reforms. I mean, they haven't in over 60 years, but I've got a pretty good feeling about it this time. Damn it. So on the eve of the meeting, party mouthpiece The People's Daily published a full-page essay giving a grim reminder that it will always be the Communist Party that runs things. In no uncertain terms, the essay says hostile forces inside and outside of China are seeking to undermine the country through calls for reform and transparency. It's best not to apply logic to that train of thought or your head might explode. Well, the party needs some kind of scapegoat for all the problems facing China today, or else people might start to realize that it is the cause of all the problems facing China today. So over the years, the party latched onto the rhetoric of hostile foreign forces undermining China. The victimization by foreign powers is a crucial part of the public narrative in China, essential for understanding the country today. You know what that means? It's time for a history lesson! Yeah! Well, here I am in ancient China, and by ancient China, I mean 150 years ago. Hey, ladies. Oh, look out! It's a tiger! Shoo! Shoo! Wow. The Qing dynasty was sure a scary place, but there are things running loose a whole lot scarier than tigers. White people. Europeans have come to China and are carving it up like a melon. They're calling the Qing dynasty the sick man of Asia, which I'm sure has nothing to do with the fact that Europeans are carving up the country like a melon. What's happening now will affect China all the way to the 20th century. Let me show you what I mean with a clip from Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury.
Hello, what do you want? I'm a pet. No, not allowed, I'm afraid.
Now that was actually based on the real-life Huangpu Park in Shanghai. The British banned Chinese from entering the park between 1890 and 1928. That's 38 years. But it wasn't always bad between China and the West. In the 17th century, before the unequal treaties and devastating wars, Europe had a total crush on China. To the court of Louis XIV! Wow, it's bigger on the inside. In Louis XIV's time, made in China was the crème de la crème. Europe is making the first sustained contact with China since the ancient Roman Empire, and it's love at first sight. The French are making knockoffs of Chinese porcelain and art. Prominent European thinkers like Voltaire see the example of Chinese culture and philosophy as a remedy for many of the ills plaguing Europe. Unfortunately, China thinks Europe is a great guy and all, but is just not that into him. Europe doesn't take it too well. In fact, Britain kind of gets China addicted to opium. Tired of losing so much money to China over tea and silk, they start mass exporting opium, becoming very successful drug dealers. When the Qing court objects, Britain's highly industrialized navy and army begins indiscriminately killing people left and right until the Qing decides opium's great, and they don't really need Hong Kong. It was called the Opium War. There were two. But we've all been there. It's like when my middle school crush Connie Cody told me she wasn't interested, I got her family addicted to opium, then stole their house. So why didn't China like foreigners before, foreigners gave them a reason to? Well, it wasn't always that way, but part of the problem was a Confucian belief that merchants were the lowest class of society. So when wave after wave of European merchants started showing up, but to really understand it, we have to go back to the Ming Dynasty, to the TARDIS. Now, despite the dislike of merchants, Chinese merchants are getting to be a powerful force in mid-Ming Dynasty. They're amassing wealth and power through trade with foreigners, spawning port cities that now rival the capital as centers of power. This isn't sitting too well with the emperors, so they will decide to ban maritime activities. At first it just applies to private merchants, but eventually all trade activities are forbidden. This extreme policy of isolationism that wipes out innovation, as well as a corrupt network of eunuchs and concubines running the government, ultimately allows the Manchus, an ethnic group to the northeast of China, to amass power and sweep through China, conquering everything in their wake. It's these guys that will start the Qing dynasty. So you see, China was already under foreign rule long before the Europeans even got started. It turns out letting a bunch of concubines and eunuchs run your country isn't such a good idea. Especially the eunuchs. They get real testy when they feel they're getting cut short. Back to the Qing. Now we have droves of Europeans flocking to China. They're being called foreign devils. They're getting banned from learning Chinese. They even aren't allowed to approach the Qing capital, and the Canton system limits the entire trade of the Western world to 13 factories, or what we would now call trading posts in Canton, which we would now call Guangzhou. Now, Europe is already tearing up the rest of the world with its modern military. Why not China? Wave after wave of unequal treaties will divide China between competing Western powers. And while the Qing is caught up trying to fend off the ravenous West, they're also trying to deal with the ethnic Han Chinese who think they're just as bad as the West. 20 million people will die in the Taiping Rebellion, the largest uprising in human history, when a man named Huang Xiuquang has a vision he's the younger brother of Jesus and is on a divine mission to wipe out the Manchurians. Then there's the Boxer Rebellion, an uprising that tries to expel all foreigners but gets crushed by Western powers that then completely loot Beijing. That's why you can see so many nice Chinese things in British museums. Are you getting why China might have an aversion to hostile foreign forces? To top things off, despite China's attempts to modernize, systemic corruption is making any reform impossible. Japan, on the other hand, once a vassal state of China, does manage it, and during the First Sino-Japanese War, decimates Chinese forces and takes the Korean peninsula from them. That's a huge blow to public morale. So things at the turn of the 19th century seem pretty bleak in China. People are starting to question if there will even be a China in the future, that maybe Chinese culture is what's failing them. So some begin to turn to what they think will be a new type of Western reform, communism. That's something the Communist Party likes to forget now, that inherently they are not Chinese. The Communists reject ancient China as being backwards, superstitious. That's why Mao can convince people during the Cultural Revolution to smash the four olds, to completely annihilate any trace of the old China. The old China is a loser. And the Communist Party really likes reminding people of that, because how else can they boast that China is only great because of them? And if there are problems in China still, it's because the foreign powers are still out there with their Western ideas, just waiting to carve up China like a melon again, unless the Communist Party is there to stop them. And I'll have more on that on the next episode of China Uncensored. Thanks for joining me on my journey through time. Let's go back home. Wait, where am I? Oh my God, it was Earth all along! You bastards! You blew it up! You finally blew it up!